think that we've gotten caught up in this whole everything has to be perfect and you have to be so lean. I think what we really need to be focusing on is staying healthy, doing all the work, making sure your body is recovering, because that's where the great surges in performance and in your fitness come, is through the training.
This is Running for Real, the podcast for runners who know that for every runner's high, there are just as many lows. All those just missed PRs, easy runs that feel hard, injury blues, and more. Each week, we'll talk to running, health, and wellness experts about their highs, lows, and best advice to build our confidence. Running for Real is about being honest, being brave, and most of all, not feeling alone. And now here's our host, Tina Muir.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 165 of the Running for Real podcast. When I think about that number now, 165 episodes, it is kind of crazy to think about. Like, that is a lot. And when I think about my guest today, the last time I had her on was number 50. And that at the time felt like it was such a big number. And here we are over 100 later, and we're at 165 and things are going strong. And if you are a new listener, welcome. I'm so happy to have you. I am loving seeing this big boom that's happened with podcasts. And those of you who have been podcast listeners for years know that, you're finally getting everyone seeing what all the fuss is about. But then those of you who are new, it can be really overwhelming, can't it? Actually, even for those of us who have been using it quite a few years, if you type in any topic, there's hundreds of podcasts that could come up. Even within the realm of running, there's so many that you could choose from. So I'm really happy that you are here with me right now. And I hope you enjoy the Running for a podcast. I hope you subscribe and go leave me a rating and review on iTunes or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Hopefully this becomes your favorite podcast, but wherever you listen to your podcast, you leave a rating and review, because those really help me. They help my podcast stand out so that we can get better guests. And this guest today, I am honored to have. And I remember last time I interviewed her, it was the biggest deal. She was the biggest guest by far that I'd had on. And I'm not saying that she isn't a big deal now. She absolutely is. But you guys leaving rating and reviews, you guys subscribing, that really helps me to kind of get out there and bring these guests on. And I like to think this podcast is very different, because I've said this before, that I feel like this podcast, I really try and bring you in on the conversation as if you're sitting there in the room with us, rather than many other podcasts. It's kind of as if you're almost eavesdropping on two people having a conversation. I'm constantly saying, hey, what about the listener who might be thinking this? Or what would you say to a listener who was thinking that? Because I really want to bring you in, because I know from experience that when you're listening to a podcast, there's so many moments where you have this question and you're like, just please ask them this, and they never do. So I really try and think about what you might be wondering, and I hope I do a good job of that. So if this is your first time, hopefully some of these questions you will be like, yes, that's exactly what I wanted to know. And I hope that's where I stand out. All right, so last week we had 2 episodes. I had both my live shows from the California International Marathon. On Thursday, we had the first episode, which was the Superstars Live. Now, again, if you are a new listener, Superstars is the community that you are now a part of, the tribe. There is the Superstars group on Facebook. If you type in Superstars or type in Running for Real, you will see it come up. It is a wonderful place to be. I promise you, the most positive and uplifting place on the internet. I want you to go and join if you haven't already. But I wanted to dedicate that episode to Superstars, kind of getting to know the everyday person, because you hear from, the Cara Gouchers and these people who are at the top of their game or considered experts or people that we all look up to. But sometimes all of us, the everyday runners, you guys listening, you have an amazing story too. So that live episode, I wanted to bring some everyday people up. Everyone is an everyday person, but I wanted to show that your story is just as valuable as anyone else. So hopefully that one came across. And then the day 2 was James McCurdy, who's built this incredible coaching platform, and Max King, this amazing ultra marathoner, trail runner who's accomplished all kinds of results. And that one was quite a light, funny episode. You'll hear in that we were laughing quite a lot. One of the questions, just to give you some example here, one of the questions was, how many times is ideal to go poop the morning before your race? So we just kind of went all rogue. We talk about Max pinning his bib to his chest once. Crazy. But actually that wasn't even the craziest part of the day. So just a really fun, light conversation. So I hope you enjoyed that one. Now, all rambles aside, today I am absolutely honored to bring you Cara Goucher. And we're really at a turning point in our sport right now. There is a lot going on. I mean, I guess just in society as a whole, but within our sport that could decide our future. Many of these decisions that we are making right now are really going to kind of determine where we go. And I've absolutely loved seeing Cara speak her truth and be honest about things and just be so incredibly brave. For many years, Cara's been one of my biggest inspirations, one of my role models, but now even more so for just speaking up about things that she believes and stands firmly in. And I just really admire her for that. So I think there's a lot of questions that you've maybe been wondering about that we're going to answer today. We go over a lot of different things. And as Cara has been kind of in a few places lately, really speaking her heart in in-depth conversations, I wanted to kind of summarize a lot of the things that we've been talking about and answer your questions. So I hope I did that justice. But before we go meet her, I want to thank UCAN, Recoup, and Body Health for sponsoring this episode. All right, let's go meet Cara. Thank you to Generation UCAN for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast and for supporting me for all these years. I have been using Generation UCAN for years now, and I recently actually had a question during a live show about gels. And, for me, I just can't stomach the idea of them anymore. I love my UCAN. It works. It gives you that steady energy that just means there's no crashes. I love that Joe used it when I was guiding him, and he kept saying, how good he felt. And he loved that he was using the UCAN to help him get there. He also had a bar before his race. I think maybe 2 bars actually. And it was just really nice to see someone else kind of getting the benefits from it. And I hear many of you telling me about how much you appreciate UCAN, how much you use it. And they do have these sample packs that if you are unsure whether you want to go for a big tub, you can try it out. However, the big deal that I am able to give you is 25% off your order, even if you've ordered with Generation UCAN before, by using code TinaMuir25. If you want to give it a try, 25% off your order. That's pretty impressive. I love the cranberry raspberry tub, the powder that I can put a scoop into my drink before a run or during a run if I was going to go on a long enough run, which not really right now, but if I was, that is what I would be using. However, for me, the bars are where it's at right now. I absolutely love the bars, have a bar every single day. Peanut butter and chocolate is my favorite flavor, but there are plenty of flavors for you to choose from, and they really are enjoyable to eat. They are perfect to eat at any point. You can eat them after your runs when you kind of in a bit of a rush have to get off somewhere, or I like to sometimes even eat them literally as I'm getting ready to walk out the door on a run, because the amazing thing about UCAN is it does not upset your stomach. It is really the first product I've ever come across that I've never had a problem with my stomach. So you can get 25% off your order, as I mentioned, by going to generationucan.com and using code TinaMuir25. And I cannot wait to hear more of you telling me just how much it's changed your running. Cara, thank you for coming back on the Running for Real podcast. I am just really excited to talk to you, to kind of dig into these topics. And it's funny, I don't know if you remember this, but last time you were here, you kind of alluded to a few things, and you said a few things that kind of left everyone a bit like, huh. But then at the time you weren't able to speak about it. So it's great that now you finally can, and we can go talk about all of this. So thank you so much for the time and just for being here today.
Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, no, this is going to be good. And, we are going to go into a few different areas today. I was just telling Cara before we started recording that, I'm sorry, I do say Cara. I know Americans say Cara, but I just can't do it. I've tried. So you probably know that with other British people, right? They probably call you Cara as well, do they?
Oh yeah, I get called Cara all the time. It's totally fine, okay. Especially British people.
Okay. But we're going to go over a few different topics today, but I really want you guys to go and listen to a few things that Cara has already done, because I think those are going to sum up some of the questions that you may have, some of the things you may want to know from her. But I don't want to just keep making her answer the same questions again and again. Particularly, I mean, you know this, that as an elite runner, people tend to ask the same questions again and again. And that is how many, in my opinion, many elite runners and kind of celebrity runners end up with these cookie cutter answers, because they get asked it so much that it just kind of comes out without them even thinking about it. So I don't want you to get to that point with this stuff because it's so important. So that being said, for those listeners, Sally Bergeson and Cara recently did a 3-part Not a podcast. I will have links in the show notes. On my social media, I also have ways to get that. Definitely recommend that conversation. That's really deep, really honest and open and real. Recommend that one. And also the Clean Sport podcast. Are you a host every week or is it
no?
Most weeks? Okay.
Yeah, I'm sort of like a co-host. So sometimes I do it and sometimes I don't.
Okay, so the Clean Sport podcast is a few episodes in particular. I will direct you to those ones as well. So be sure to listen to those 2 things in particular. And we're going to go over some different things today. So for those who have been somehow living under a rock, this all kind of, really kicked off when Mary Cain spoke out about the kind of mental and emotional abuse she had kind of struggled with at the Nike Oregon project with Alberto Salazar, who has been banned from coaching for 4 years, but is still very much a part of Nike. I mean, we just saw, as of this recording a few days ago, that that his building was reopened, still named with his name. People protested. We'll talk about that later. But he's still very much a part of things. So, but for you, you mentioned in this podcast with Sally, not a podcast with Sally, that you had spoken to Mary actually before it came out. But when she was talking to you on the podcast, you were getting quite emotional. And it was Shayna who was on the podcast with you, right? And Shayna was getting quite emotional. And I remember when I was listening to it, I was running along and I started crying because I just felt sick of what I was hearing. So for someone listening who kind of is just kind of catching up with this stuff, hearing Mary, a girl who was 17 to 20, is that right? Kind of talking about, feeling so miserable that she started cutting herself, just, hating her running, hating everything about what she was doing because of the way she was feeling. How did that make you feel, at that time? You kind of went silent for a while because you obviously were trying to process what she was saying, but was that a real kind of wake up call for you? Or you probably already knew it, but maybe a bit of like, wow, like this was really deep.
Yeah, it was really powerful hearing her speak. And also just listening to her brings me back to a lot of things that I went through and that I witnessed. And so just hearing her, it does sort of just like choke me up because it makes me think about feeling helpless. And I mean, when I left the Oregon project, I told my husband, if I can't run for someone else, I'm done. The joy was just gone. And so hearing her talk about that, and obviously hers was more serious because she had started self-inflicting harm, and it just is so sad. But I think if you've been in a position where you want something really bad and everyone around you is pushing you to these extremes, I think you can kind of relate to it and how the joy can just be sucked out and you can really lose yourself and feel so helpless and depressed. Like, I think a lot of us have been, maybe not in such quite a serious manner, but we've been in places where we are so unhappy and we are seriously depressed and we are really struggling with happiness in our lives because of something that we wanted so desperately that's not happening.
I think most people will probably be able to relate to that at some point in their teenage years with some kind of boy or a girl that they really liked. I mean, right. I for sure can relate to that, you know it's not good for you. You can sense that this isn't right. Maybe people are even telling you something's not right here, but you just can't help yourself because you feel like you need it. You feel like, what would you be without it? So I think, you're right that most people can relate to that. And, Mary speaking out in the way she did really kind of, got that conversation going. And for you, since then, you've really kind of continued to speak out. Not that you hadn't been, you'd been saying things for the last few years, but this kind of really seems to have opened the floodgates where you will say your thoughts on anything and everything now, which is great to see. What does that feel like for you, being able to share these things and actually say what's on your mind after all these years of being an elite athlete where you're very much told to put your head down, get on with what you're doing, and, your results are what we need to see. We don't want to hear your mouth. Yeah,
honestly, it's been really crazy. like just even walking through stories that I used to talk about, like racing at the Boston Marathon or racing at the World Championships, where before I would say, and I had a 6.5-month-old, and then that would get applause. But now I can say, and I wasn't getting paid, and I was frustrated, and I was in a fight with my sponsor. And so it's been really crazy to really like tell the stories behind the stories. I was so afraid for so long that I would get sued or I would get in trouble. But I feel like the more women that keep speaking out, the more I feel like I just have to tell everything that happened. And yeah, you're right. I feel like I don't really hold back anymore. And I just don't want anyone to experience the things I experienced. And there's no need for anyone to experience them. And we can have a healthy culture around our sport where women are supported and you still work really, really hard and there's still expectation on you, but it's done in a different and more healthy way. And I think seeing Mary at 23 come forward and be so emboldened, and even when Nike released their statement, which kind of shamed her, her taking ownership back and saying, I can't believe you're going to shame me, and like talking through it. I just was like, what am I afraid of? Like Mary Kane is just like, she still has her whole career ahead of her and my elite side is done. So if she's not afraid, like I shouldn't be afraid. And again, I think a lot of it too is, since there was a conclusion in the Salazar and Dr. Brown case, even though they're both being appealed, since there was an actual decision and they were found guilty and they were found culpable of crossing the line, that also has made me feel like I can talk now more freely. Whereas before I was sort of painted, especially by the media, as like just bitter and kind of a whiner and nothing's really coming of it. And now I'm like, no, see, I mean, I was telling the truth. So yeah, it's been a big transformation the last few months for sure.
Yeah. And I can imagine that being the case. And I think again, a lot of people can relate maybe in a work situation with a boss that makes them feel uncomfortable, and they feel so uncomfortable that they leave, and people think, oh, well, she's just leaving because she didn't get the promotion or whatever it may be. And later on it comes out that, I mean, Harvey Weinstein is obviously the good example of that. Right. But yeah, I think it is good that more and more women are choosing to speak out about things. And I was going to save this towards the end, but what would you say for someone, obviously you're not an expert, you're not a psychologist that someone can go talk to, but for someone in that situation who feels something is wrong, they have that gut feeling in their stomach, whatever their situation is, that something's wrong. You had it, Mary had it. Many others have had it, but they feel scared. They feel like they don't have a way out. What would you like to say to them to encourage them to speak out and do something about it?
I think your gut is there for a reason, and we have those instincts for a reason, and you need to find an ally who's going to help you navigate that. No one deserves to be in a situation where they're being shamed or abused emotionally or physically. Nobody deserves that. And you get into these mindsets. Like I definitely was blinded by my love for this one person and my desire to please this one person. And all of a sudden you're like, whoa, how did I get here? But that's not your fault. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things I'm really pushing for is to have all training programs have that safe space where it's a person that's independent of the organization. They're not a member of the team. They're not paid by the sponsor. They are an independent person where you can go and say, I feel uncomfortable about this. And, but in the meantime, until that's established and until that's a thing, I would just say, find a safe person. And you know what? It could be me. It could be anyone. It could be Mary Kane. Like, we will listen to you and we will help you find the right people.
Okay. Thank you so much for not only just saying that, but actually meaning that. And, you already have enough to do, and you already have, I can imagine, a lot of people reaching out to you. So thank you for taking on that little extra responsibility there. Now, that being said, we're talking about you speaking out. You actually have said that in person to people that know you, you are actually quite quiet. So for someone else listening who's quiet, how are you able to do this, put yourself out there, speak out there? Do you have to kind of put on a persona? Do you have like a special pair of socks you put on before you speak? Or like, how do you build up the kind of, I don't know, change in personality to do that?
It is funny. I'm actually very, very shy. I'm by far the shyest of my siblings. And, when I was growing up, I was so shy. And even in college, like I couldn't order a pizza because I didn't want to talk to a stranger on the phone. Like online shopping was like the greatest thing that ever happened to me. But I think it's just you get to a point where I do think having my son has been part of it. You get to this point where you just can't stand back anymore with things you care about. And I do feel a responsibility in the sense of people do listen to me. And so it does become my responsibility to speak for those who can't. And, there's people who don't have as big of a following, or maybe they're just too scared and they need people that have a little bit bigger of a following or who have a voice that people listen to speak. So I take it more as a responsibility, but also when it really comes down to what I think is right and wrong, it's taken a long time, but I'm willing to make that stand and to say, no, this is something I'm not willing to back down on. Like, you cannot treat people this way or cannot treat women this way. And so it just is like this strength that comes when I feel so passionate about it. But it's funny because in my real life, I'm still actually pretty shy.
Do you see shy, this is totally off topic, do you see shy as a negative word?
I don't. I just, I'm an introvert and I'm a little shy. It's hard I'm very good at like, if you want to talk about running, I can talk about running because I feel really confident in myself and what I know. But as far as like making new friends or, my son has really stretched me as a person because he's very social and he wants play dates and so I've had to like meet other people, That's something that normally I wouldn't do. I would just drop him off and pick him up. And so he's really stretched me a lot as a person, but I don't think it's bad. I just think it's the way we're all made differently. And I'm not super outgoing and I'm a little bit more shy and a little bit slower to warm up, but I'm still cool.
Thank you to Recoup for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. Now, you heard me talking about Recoup just a few weeks ago, and there is a reason I have brought on this company. As you know, I really try hard to select companies that I think will actually be beneficial to you. And when it comes to recovery products, I am very selective because I know there's so much out there. And as you are going to hear from Jada Sherry in about a month's time, maybe a little bit less, you will hear that, a lot of it is something that we don't necessarily need. However, this is a product, what Recoup makes here, I wish I had had in college. There's so many opportunities, so many times I think this would have saved me. And I'm really excited to bring it to you because yes, we need to work on our weaknesses. Yes, we need to go to physical therapists and we need to do things for rehab. But there is also comes a point when you have a race coming up and, it's 2 weeks to go, something is really bothering you, and you either have a choice, you either try and go through, which I have done many a time, or you decide to kind of pull the plug there. And pulling the plug is really hard to do, especially if you know that there is something that can get you to the line, get you through your race, and then you can take a rest and figure out what is going on. So I want to tell you about the Cryosphere and the Cryo Sleeve, which are from Recoup Fitness, and they are these cold sleeves that stay cold for 6 hours. The Cryosphere stays cold for 6 hours, which gives you relief on the go. It's essentially an ice cup replacement, which means it's mess-free, it's easily cleanable, time-saving. It's a sphere that comes out of the handle, so you can also use it for like plantar fasciitis or feet issues on the bottom of your feet. It is really just a wonderful product and something, it could have saved my shins so many times during my collegiate and early professional career. There's also the Cryo Sleeve, which combines ice and compression for 1 hour of cold portable relief, which would have come in handy many a time as well. It's great for reducing inflammation, speeding up recovery, pain relief, and just a wonderful product to use. They're also working on hot and cold sleeves for the ankle and shoulder in 2020, which is very exciting. But I really just feel like this product is a great idea because of the portability, because of the, how much you can reuse it. You can not have to worry about the mess and the faff of finding ice cups. And it's just really good for when you're on the go, which when we are going towards races or just in life in general, we are often on the go right now. So if you use code Tina Muir at recoupfitness.com, you can get 15% off your order. That's Recoup Fitness, RECOUP fitness.com, and use code Tina Muir. You will get 15% off.
You know, I'm an introvert and I'm a little shy. It's hard I'm very good at, like, if you want to talk about running, I can talk about running because I feel really confident in myself and what I know. But as far as like making new friends, or, you know, my son has really stretched me as a person because he's very social and he wants play dates and so I've had to like meet other people, That's something that normally I wouldn't do. I would just drop them off and pick them up. And so he's really stretched me a lot as a person, but I don't think it's bad. I just think it's the way we're all made differently. And I'm not super outgoing and I'm a little bit more shy and a little bit slower to warm up, but I'm still cool.
Oh, absolutely. I think everyone listening could agree to that. I actually asked that for a selfish reason. My husband is a total introvert and my daughter is too. And I've been reading some books about, there's a book called Quiet by Susan Cain. Have you heard of it? It's about introverts.
Interesting.
And it's really, really interesting. You would definitely enjoy it if you are an introvert. But I can't remember if it was that book or another book. They said that, when I'm raising Bailey, I shouldn't say to people, oh, she's shy, because there's such a negative kind of connotation around that. And so I've just been kind of curious about that with people who kind of are in your situation, who are introverted, but have been very successful, if they see that as a negative word. So that was totally selfish on my part. But all right. So I want to go into weight here a little bit. Now, since this whole conversation has been going on, there's very much been a lot of discussion around it. We've seen people like Jen Rhines say, it is possible to be healthy and happy with your weight, the whole way through your career. We've seen a lot of people speak out about, it being the negative way, high school athletes, collegiate athletes, elite athletes. I also had spoken about it a few years ago. And since the work I've done, I've realized that I was way more involved in it than I thought I was. But what is the solution here? We know it is important to performance, but how, as runners, we don't do very well with, well, it's kind of important, but don't focus on it, because we want to control things. We want to, figure out to the nth degree what we can do to make this right. So what do you see as the solution for runners in the future?
Yeah, I think, it is a part of the conversation, especially at the elite level. You do want to have a lean body, healthy body composition. But I do think the way we talk about it, like just some arbitrary number and just step on the scale, I feel like if we educated athletes more, like, these are the foods you should be eating before a hard, long run. This is what's going to fuel you for that. And then this is what you should be eating after a hard, long run to help you recover. And, these are foods for days when you're lifting, and these are foods for when you have speed sessions. I feel like naturally people would figure out, because part of the leanness is that you're getting really fit and you're responding to the work and recovering from the work. And instead of focusing on this number on the scale, if we were focusing on how we're feeling and how we're recovering, I think a lot of that would come naturally. But I don't think we always give athletes those tools. I think we say, do this workout and you still need to lose weight. You still need to lose weight. So I don't know. I think like the whole conversation could shift of like, yeah, we need to be in the gym. Yeah, we need to be running. Yeah, we need to be doing recovery runs. But then, just like you said, runners want to do everything they can to be the best. So what if you're talking about things you can do to recover better or to prep your body more for a hard workout? And those just naturally will help you shed the weight that you don't need, and I just feel like we get so caught up on this number on the scale, and it drives me insane.
Oh, me too.
It drives me crazy. It's like, why that doesn't matter. What matters is that your body is strong and can still kick and can handle those tough paces and still kick off of them. And instead of focusing on the work that goes into getting your to that place where you could be in a world championship final and hang on to this tough pace, we want to shortcut it with weight. And the weight, of course, it enters into it, but it's such a small percentage compared to all of the training and all of the recovery and all of the time in the gym and all of the stretching and all the little things. The weight honestly is such a small part of all of that. And when you're doing all those other things, it just comes naturally.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Do you have a scale?
I do. I haven't used it in a long time. And one of the things I also wanted to say was that I think I heard, Hillary Stellingworth,
yeah.
Stellingworth talk about this, how she, would be a few pounds heavier in most of the season and then lean out right at the end. And that is very much so what I did throughout my career. I would have, and I'm not a big food elimination person. I feel like that leads to bad stuff because nothing should ever be prohibited. Like everything should be allowed. But as races got closer, I tried to eat less dessert and I stopped drinking alcohol. I like having wine with dinner. And so that would be like the last couple weeks before a big race. And so I would lose a few pounds right at the end, but I couldn't maintain that physically, maybe, but emotionally, I could not maintain that for more than a month or two. Mm-hmm. And so I did always lean out right before a big competition, but it was very specific. It was like, okay, now I'm at the World Championships or now I'm at the New York City Marathon. And so it's just this small window of time. And that worked really well for me because emotionally, I couldn't handle that mindset of worrying about, like eliminating something from my diet. But on a professional level, I could handle it for 3, 4, 5 weeks. And so yeah, I don't know. That's just how I always handled it. And I did keep a scale because I would say, okay, now's the time to lose those last few pounds. But everyone's different, but that made me stay sane.
Do you think you needed to do that though? Now looking back, like would that having the normal dessert, having the glass of alcohol, of wine at night, would that really have affected you? Like, do you think any part of the mental, the emotional side of even just having that in your brain, that pressure of, okay, now it's time to lose it? Do you think any part of that would have worked better the other way?
Yeah. I mean, I think that had been ingrained in me for so many years and so many coaches taking my body fat and so many coaches weighing me in. And so I think that had been ingrained in my brain of like, oh yeah, I have to do this the last 3 weeks before, when in reality, yeah, probably not. Probably didn't make any difference whatsoever. I mean, I remember my first race at World Cross Country. Yeah. My husband had run really well. He had gotten 6th in the world and my race was the next day. And Alberto was so excited. We were celebrating and we ate a ton of food and I drank a bunch of wine. And then the next day I went and got 20th in the world, which at the time was like the greatest race of my life. And so I do think there's this scale, right, that tips when it becomes something that you're worrying about and thinking about and stressing about. It tips over to it's probably not worth it, but at the same time, like, no, you probably don't want to be drinking a bunch of wine and overeating the night before a big race.
Did you have any guilt after that day?
I mean, that night I was like, oh my gosh, I can't. I'm like, I just ate like a celebratory meal, but then the next day I ran so great. And honestly, that was a little bit eye-opening for me because I was like, oh, wow. I mean, I just ran the best race of my life. And, I didn't follow the proper traditional protocol of like a clean meal the night before a race. So I just think, again, I get what you're saying. And I agree. I think that we've gotten caught up in this whole, everything has to be perfect and you have to be so lean. And I just don't think that, again, I think what we really need to be focusing on is staying healthy, doing all the work, making sure your body is recovering, because that's where the great surges in performance and in your fitness come, is through the training.
Yes, absolutely. And it's my husband was also my coach, and he would often try and explain this to the other athletes he works with, and they just couldn't get it. And even to other coaches, like there's a difference between being fit and being lean. Like you want to be fit, physically fit. And often, it's the intervals towards the end of the season that are kind of bring in that final fitness, but they also are what kind of make your body kind of cut down a little bit more, but without it being anything about diet. But I just, I hear so many people, I've done so many episodes on eating disorders and just kind of nutritional advice. And I will put links in the show notes for anyone who needs and thinks they want those, with Nancy Clark, Jennifer Gaudiani, Jessie Haggerty, Renee McGregor, all of those. But I just hear so many people, and I wasn't going to go over these, but I think I still kind of will with you. So I want to give you a few different scenarios, people that could be listening. So let's talk about a runner in high school or the parent of a runner in high school. They were really successful. Their body is changing. It doesn't seem to be working properly. Their coach is saying, well, maybe you just need to lose some weight. They're starting to feel pressure on themselves and struggling in races because of that pressure. What would you say to that athlete?
I would say you're literally telling my story of what happened to me. And I felt like a failure because I had been this little tiny cute girl, and all of a sudden I grew and I was significantly taller, significantly heavier. And I was told, I think you probably just need to lose some weight. And I felt like a failure because I would try to not eat, and then I would get really hungry and eat like way too much. Mm-hmm. And so I would say, this is the wrong time to worry about that. I know it seems right now like this is your whole world and you're failing, but actually your body is just doing what it's supposed to do. It's maturing. And I promise you that once you adjust to it, you will be so much stronger and so much faster than the little tiny girl you used to be. And when you're in it, it's so hard to see that because all you see is like, my clothes don't fit. I used to be fast. Now these other girls are beating me.
I need to get into a college.
I need to run in college. But I promise you that if you stay the course, keep nourishing yourself, you will adjust. And there's a reason all those little girls that run so fast, and I was one of them, they aren't winning Olympic medals because you actually need to be stronger than they are there. And so this is something I talk to the girls at my high school camp is like, when your hormones are changing, it is out of your control. And the best thing for you to do is to just sort of ride the wave, rely on your teammates, focus on like team titles and focus on relays but don't fight it because your body's actually doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Yep. And it might take 6 months, it might take 3 years, but at some point you will adjust to it and you'll be a much better athlete.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you. And for anyone else who is in that position, Shannon Osika talked about that in my episode with her. So be sure to go listen to that because she tried to fight it for a while and it just didn't work. So listen to the episode with Shannon. All right. So next, a runner in college. The team is, maybe they're surrounded by some other runners who are kind of almost, and I remember doing this when I was in college, like you kind of almost get in a competition as to who can eat the healthiest. And I hate that I did this, but I remember making remarks like, is that all you're eating? When I would be doing the exact same things. And I get so annoyed at my like bitchiness at the time, but maybe you're surrounded by other runners who are just eating salads before their meals. It feels like this competition, and someone wants to get the right fuel in, wants to be healthy, but they're kind of scared of going too far. They hear these stories of girls kind of going down a dark path. They don't want to go there. But they, at the same time, they feel bigger than the other girls on the team. So should they be kind of going down that same path?
Yeah, I think this is really important. I think this happens a lot at the NCAA level. And that, the getting, controlling with your food and kind of competitive, that is really, it spreads through teams and it's hard to fight. But I would just say your teammate that is restricting her body might get a 6 month or a year good result out of that. But the consequences are so not worth it because you just can't sustain it. And at some point, you're going to not only slow down, but you're just going to start breaking down. You're going to start getting stress fractures. You're going to have fertility issues. I mean, honestly, these are real things that happen to real collegiate athletes. And they get into these holes and they just can't get healthy because they depleted their body for so long. And so again, it's sort of like the high schooler. It's like, stay the course. Like if you're kind of maintaining where you are, slightly getting better, that's way better than these crazy spikes and dips, because that's going to carry you through for a much more strong, consistent career. And your teammates that are restricting, that it seems like they're getting better or they're having, some benefit from it, it does not last. It can't last. Your body has to be nourished. And so it's so hard because there's so much pressure, especially when you're on a team like that, where you're always together and you travel together and you eat together, but you really have to be strong and think about the long term. And yeah, you're going to run great, and you're going to be able to run great for years and years, not just one season.
Yes. Thank you. So good. All right. And finally, a recreational runner who has a really big goal, be it breaking 4, be it getting a Boston qualifier, be it breaking 3, an Olympic trials qualifier. They feel like their body doesn't look like others at that level. They want to get every last drop out of their performance. If I'm going to reach this goal, I have to do everything. So, I need to eat clean, because you said about getting the right fuel in, getting the right foods in. This is what you should be eating before. This is what you should be eating after. I'm doing that. I'm just, making sure that I'm getting those foods in. But then I get the sense that people are telling me that I need to loosen up, or I need to stop avoiding meals out with other people. What would you say to that person?
It's tough because you're an adult and you have this goal, but also life is to be lived. And it's not, I feel sad when people are so strict that they can't go have a meal with friends. Like, I have never been in a position where I couldn't go have dinner with friends. And this is like 8 days or 3 days before I leave for the Olympics. I'm still going and having meals with my friends. And if there's anything I could say, it's just, even when I was making Olympic teams, I mean, literally, I was having nights where I would eat an entire medium-sized family bag of M&Ms. And I did that. I still do it, but I did it my entire career. And, maybe someday it'll catch up with me. But in general, I just think you have to be normal. You have to live a normal life. And is your goal worth it when you can't? I mean, now you're cutting out enjoyment. I'm not saying you have to eat this decadent meal or you have to eat this giant bag of M&Ms, but if you can't go and have dinner with your friends without worrying about, oh, I'm going to eat too many calories, or I didn't want that many carbs, or that's too much fat, that's not fun, right? That's not enjoyable. It's supposed to be fun and enjoyable. And even when you're working hard to achieve goals that are really important to you, there still should be some joy along the way, because otherwise it's not worth it.
Well, and that joy will eventually disappear, and
right,
you'll be stuck in a place where it's gone.
I'm miserable. I'm working towards this goal. It's not going to bring you that joy that you think when you've been miserable getting there. So I just think everybody can take a deep breath. I think we do live in a culture now where everything is to the extreme, and it's propelled by social media. Like, this is what I ate, and this is so clean, and clean eating. We hear clean eating all the time. And it's so, I have to remind people, like, I got pretty far in life and I didn't even know what organic was till I was like in my 30s. And I'm not saying that eating organic is bad or anything like that, but I grew up on like Spam and goulash and hot dish, and I turned out okay.
Yeah.
I turned out all right. So I think we can take this stuff to extremes. And I'm a big proponent of like 70% great, 30% whatever you're wanting. 80-20, a lot of people do 80-20. I'm a little bit more like, no, there needs to be a little bit more flexibility in your life. And so, yeah, live your life.
Yeah. Thank you. I think that's really important. And that explains it really well there. Thank you. All right, so let's talk about another issue that you've talked about, and you mentioned it earlier on. So last time you were here, you did mention that you regretted how quickly you jumped back into training, but you didn't really say much more than that after having Colt, that is. So even though you ran a PR, was it 6 months you said after having Colt at Boston? You regret that right now because, you don't really remember a lot of it. You pushed your body too far. In that Sally podcast, I heard you say you were wearing a diaper essentially for a few months. But we see this time and time again, and I see it so often with recreational runners. I have a lot of new mothers that follow me and reach out to me, and many of them kind of want to do that. It has to be within a year. I really want to prove that I'm back. I want to prove that a baby didn't affect me. I can still do this myself. What would be your advice for these women who have had a baby and they're just feeling a pressure from someone else, or most likely just from themselves, that they need to get back up to where they were?
I would say, please don't set a timeline. If you have your baby and 3 weeks later you're feeling great and you want to go for a jog, that's fine. I'm not saying don't do that, but these hard limits that were like, I have to have my body back by this point, or I have to be back training, or I have to be racing. I'm telling you, you are going to regret this later on. And it's such a short time in your life compared to the rest of your life. Like, it seems like, oh, I need to prove to everybody that I'm still here. But you know what? You can never have that time back with your baby. And like, I can never have that time back. Like, I can prove to people over and over again that I can look good and have a lean body and run well, but I can never have that time back. And just, yeah, it's such a huge regret of mine. I just wish I could go back. And I mean, all moms are stressed and all moms are tired, but I wish I could have that time with my son still. And also just physically, I have chronic hip issues, which have turned into a chronic knee issue because I rushed back. And we live in the society of like, look how quickly she got her body back and look how quickly she was back out running. And we're trying to ignore the fact that your body grew a human, totally changed. Your body totally changed. And then your body has to come back. But also if you're nursing, there's still all these hormones flowing through you. And so you're not the same person yet. And that's okay. It's going to take 9 months, a year, maybe a year and a half. Like, that's just reality. But we like to say like, oh yeah, whatever. I got my body back in 6 weeks or 12 weeks or 18 weeks. And we're ignoring like a hardcore scientific fact, which is that you had a baby and there's hormones and body changes and things that happen that we start to say they're not significant. And it is significant what your body went through. It's traumatic having a baby and it's hard and you need time to heal and recover. And I really, I ran 224, 50 something at Boston in 2011, and Colt was there and he was 6.5 months old and it looked so amazing. And I've talked about that race for years, but I would never recommend that to anyone.
Thank you to Body Health for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast and for supporting me for all these years. You have heard me talking about Body Health Perfect Amino for probably 5 years now, and there is a reason for that. I truly believe in this company and Perfect Amino and what it does. And I have to say, recently when I was at the California International Marathon, there was a ton of you that came up to me and said how you had heard me talking about it all these years, probably pestering you, but you've decided to give it a go and you were kind of shocked by the difference it made and how much better you feel. There were so many people that said that to me in person, and it was just so nice to hear, in addition to those of you who reach out to me. So if you are listening to this and you've been hearing me talking about it and you're wondering, I don't get it, like, how does it work? Like, what does it do that's so special? Well, I just want to kind of explain again, as it's been a little while since I've said this. So we all know that we need amino acids. They help with recovery. They kind of build our body up. We're breaking them down with training, and amino acids are what you need to build it back up. But what we don't often talk about or hear about is that only up to 48% of the food that we take in these protein sources is actually able to be utilized, I should say. The rest of it is converted to waste. So that's things like eggs are 48% of them are utilized, meat, poultry, and fish, 32% of it our body can utilize and turn into these amino acids. However, body health, 99% of it is utilized by the body. Only 1% has to be kind of removed and taken out as waste, which means that your body can get what it needs. It can help you to recover. I've really seen the difference in myself. As I've said so many times, as an elite runner, I trained using this. I really noticed the difference when I missed it for a few days. And now I take it just to kind of help my body recover with all the other things I'm throwing at it. So it really helps with that too. It contains the 8 essential amino acids the body needs to support and maintain its muscular, skeletal, enzymatic, that's such a hard word to say, and hormonal systems. So you've heard me talking about it. So go give it a try. Go to tinamuir.com/aminos. That's AMINOS. tinamuir.com/aminos, and go into 2020 right. Come on, let's set you up so that you can succeed and you can recover, because if you are healthy and staying healthy, then you are going to have the races that you want. You can give yourself the best chance to succeed. So go get some. tinamuir.com/aminos.
And it is significant what your body went through. It's traumatic having a baby, and it's hard, and you need time to heal and recover. And I really, I ran 224, 50 something at Boston in 2011, and Colt was there, and he was 6.5 months old, and it looked so amazing. And I've talked about that race for years, but I would never recommend that to anyone. It has caused so much emotional damage because I was not present. And it has caused so much physical damage because my body never really healed. And now it's just sort of these chronic issues from all of the imbalances and from all of the, pushing my body when it wasn't ready to be pushed.
Mm-hmm. Do you think any part of it is that we as runners are maybe more than other, I guess maybe athletes in general, but I remember after having Bailey, I very much took it as, it doesn't normally take me more than a month to get over a marathon, on a really hard effort. And I'm not as sore as I was after a marathon. So, maybe I'll give myself a few extra weeks, but maybe 6 weeks. And then, I should be feeling back to normal by now, because if it can recover from a marathon and that being that sore in 4 weeks, then surely 6 weeks is enough for it to kind of be back to normal. It is hard to wrap your brain around it. I don't know if you remember this, of being like, what do you mean I'm 6 months postpartum? I'm not recovered yet. Like, what are you talking about? Like, how can my body have had 6 months and it's still not normal? Of course it is. Anything you'd say there?
Yeah. So it's so funny you say that, because even going into my birth, I was like, I don't need any classes. I manage pain for a living. Mm-hmm. And I didn't take any classes, and it was so painful and so hard. And it was so hard for my body to relax. I was fighting it. And just again, it is a totally different thing. They are not the same. Managing pain tolerance in a marathon is not the same thing as managing giving birth. Recovering from a marathon is not the same thing. There's this whole flood of hormones that go through your body. Your body physically changes in a way that is out of your control. I remember looking at baby books, and they would have what to expect when you're expecting. And they would have drawings of the mom as she was going through. And I was like, I'm not going to look like that. Like, my butt's not going to get bigger. And I'm not going to, I did. I looked exactly like that, because guess what? Again, that's what your body's supposed to do. And it's going through this thing, and you're not in control of it. This is like your body doing what it does. And so I just think we don't give ourselves enough credit for what we just did. And we don't give our bodies enough credit for what it did. And we don't give it enough patience and love. And if I could go back in time, I wouldn't have set anything on the calendar for at least a year. And, if maybe at 9 months I felt like, I think I'm ready to do something, that's one thing. But setting this hardcore goal and being like, I have to be ready by then, it caused me to make so many poor choices that all these years later I regret.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. I think that really will speak to a lot of people. All right, let's totally switch and go towards now. I myself and so many people lately have loved watching you in your running right now, because there is so much joy in it, and you just seem to be doing what feels good, and you just seem like so happy. And I'd love to hear for you, tell us a bit about that, and how is it different to before? Do you feel like your mindset, even when you were at your best, not even around the postpartum time, but just when you were running your best, how is your mindset different to where it was there?
It's so different, but I do love it. Before, I was very driven by making teams and getting results, and I loved the process, but I was very much so driven by a result. And now, I went through this couple of years of honestly like frustration and depression, trying to get back to being a 225 marathoner and getting injured all the time. And it was really hard. And so I'm not going to just be like, and then I just let it go. Cause took me like 2 years to get there. But honestly, when I turned 40, I was dreading it so much. I was like, I can't believe I'm turning 40. I remember when my mom turned 40. But when I woke up on the morning of my birthday, I felt like, oh, I still feel good. And I was like, and now I'm in like a different category. Like I'm not supposed to be competing against someone that's 25. Like there's a different category for a reason. And I know people are always like, age is nothing but a number. And I get that. But also physiologically, things do change in your body. And some people, they change quicker than others. So anyway, I just went through this like 2-year period of like trying to fight where I was. And finally, I just woke up with acceptance. And I haven't had an injury since I turned 40. And I've done like some crazy things. And so I'm just in this place now where I just want to do fun stuff. And if I want to race, that's one thing. But in general, I'm just having fun. Like I had a friend ask me to go running last Saturday. We were running on trails. We were in ankle deep snow. We were sinking in the snow. And I mean, I never would have done that 3 years ago because I would have been like, I'm going to get hurt or I'm going to be running so slow. It won't matter. And so, yeah, it's just, I really feel lucky where I'm at right now, where I'm running just because I love it. And if a marathon sounds interesting in a year, then I'll go for it. But right now I'm just having fun, just getting out there and trying new things.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so clear from your photos and just the way that you're talking that there is just joy, and it is kind of just doing things that sound good. And you don't actually know this, but the listeners know that I was a guide for a visually impaired runner doing his first marathon at CIM. And we were running maybe 11-minute pace, between 10 and 11-minute pace, which before I wouldn't have touched that pace. You know, I would have been like, that's going to make me run funny. It's going to damage me. But I had so much fun and there was so much joy. I'd run my PR at CIM 3 years before that. And it was light years ahead of that in terms of joy. So it's so refreshing when you can kind of let go of that. And actually, one of my Patreon members had a few questions, Jackie, and she did say to me, I won the Walt Disney World half in January, about a year after my daughter was born. You placed at the TNF 50K. She said, that can we talk about how that shows you can be at the top, but still kind of making joy the number one thing. So she wants to know, kind of from that, does the top feel any different when you're coming to it from this place that is, just a place of finding joy and doing things, not so much about the finish line?
Yeah. I mean, I listened to your podcast where you talked about running that half and you were like, I mean, before I would be like, I wouldn't want to go out because I didn't know exactly how fit I was. And instead you went and had so much fun. And that is so relatable to me. So the North Face 50K, I had zero goals as far as time or place or anything like that. And in fact, leading into it, I almost didn't do it because I was so emotionally drained because the Mary Kane stuff had come out. And my teammate, Amy Begley, had done a lot of talking, which had led me down a lot of soul searching. And I mean, I couldn't stop crying that week. I just felt like really sad that this had happened to these other women and really sad that I hadn't been a catalyst for change at the time. And so anyway, I was just drained. And so my husband was like, just have fun, And so the woman that won, I saw her before the race. And, I was just like, I'm just running it like a long run. And that was my mentality the whole time. Was on a long run, I don't go over the edge because I know I still have 15 or 20 more miles to go. Right. So whenever it starts to feel like, ooh, I'm on that edge, I back off. And so that's just what I did. And I had so much fun. And at one point with maybe 8 miles to go, someone was like, I think you're in third place. And I was like, I don't care. I don't care. I don't want to care about that because that might make me make a bad choice of trying to put in a fast mile now when I'm here for the enjoyment, And so being on the podium honestly was a huge surprise, and it was fun, but that was just like a bonus to an already, for me, it was a total success because I finished smiling. I didn't die. like Leadville, I felt like I might die. And I finished and I was like, yeah, I mean, I was ready to be done for sure, but I didn't bonk. I never crashed. I never had to walk because I had killed myself. I mean, I walked up some of the hills, but I didn't have to walk because I was like nauseous or anything like that. So, and I finished like being like, that was awesome. And so it was already a success, and, yeah, and of course, standing on the podium was fun, but it really was like secondary to just getting out there and doing something that I didn't know if I could do or not.
Yeah, I love that. That's kind of what I wanted to show, that the third place was kind of like a bonus, really. It wasn't the goal, it wasn't a part of it. And that is the nice thing. And for someone who maybe is in that stage, you mentioned about the 2 years, maybe it's not even about, turning 40 or turning in age, but just kind of feels stuck, feels like they're fighting things, they're trying harder and harder and harder, and things just are getting worse and worse and worse. What would you say to that person?
Yeah, I mean, that's where I was. I would jump in workouts and try to do workouts that I had done 3 years earlier, and then I would just get injured. And I just felt like I was beating my head on a wall. And I hated every run. I mean, every run was a reminder that I wasn't who I used to be anymore. And I felt like there was I came to like a break in the road, and it was either keep going down this path and hating running and probably just not running anymore because all my joy is based on, can I prove to people I'm still fast, or go down this other path where I stop caring about people's expectations and I stop trying to meet this definition that I've put out there for myself of what my value is. And I just explore my love of running, and I love running so much. And that's like one of the things we always preach, is that it's a lifelong sport and there's so many different avenues. And I wasn't listening to my own words. And so I would just say, try something totally different and maybe take races off the table, or maybe, I'm not a good trail runner, but I love it. It's so different and I can't compare it to myself. I have nothing, I can't like say, what was I doing in 2008 when I was really fast at this workout? Like, I don't know. I can't compare it. And so I would just say, like, give yourself grace and just try something different, because there is so much to explore and there's so much love in the sport. But when we get in that place where we're just trying to like prove something or get back to something, there is no joy. And all of a sudden something you love so dearly becomes a chore. I mean, I would just be out running, hating life and dreading it. I was dreading it so much. Yeah. And that's not worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I felt the same way. And that's exactly what I want to try and prevent people. I know sometimes it can feel like the harder you try, the more you commit, you just need to kind of break through. But often it will go the other way. You'll just get less and less joy until either some big injury comes along because you've overdone it, or you could reach a point like I did where you're like, you know what, I'm done. And, you don't want to get to that point. So right. Just like Cara said, try something new. It doesn't have to be trail running. It could be, if you're marathon training, it could be 5Ks. It could be a mile, like just something that's different and scary and will kind of shake you out of this kind of funk that I guess you're in.
Yeah.
All right. So, but, you did this kind of towards the end of your career, moved over to the trails. So just for someone listening who's thinking, okay, well, does that mean that doing something different is like my last resort when I'm getting older? Like, tell us about if someone is feeling this way kind of earlier than that, and they just they're thinking, I've got to give it my best now because I'm 30 years old, and what if I go off and do some other things, but then I've lost my only chance to run a fast marathon, or my only chance to run a fast half marathon. I have to use my speed while I got it. What would you say there?
I would say, please don't do that. Do something that makes you happy. You can always go back. You could go run a 5K for a year or two and always come back to the marathon. And in fact, that would only help your speed. And so I think we get in this thinking of like, I have to do it. Like, I have to maximize now. Like, even me, this past last winter, I was training for Houston and it was going well. And I knew I was going to run around 237. And then I pulled my hamstring in the race and had to drop out. And my coach was like, your fitness was really coming along. Like, we could wait a couple months and try again. And maybe you could run 232 and maybe you could get on the world team. I mean, you are like, maybe this is your last chance. And so for a moment I was like, oh man, like this could be my last chance to make world team, But then I was like, the thought of training for 2.5 more months and doing those really intense workouts, it made me want to cry. And the thought of just putting that behind me for now, at least, and exploring something totally different where I couldn't compare, it made me feel happy inside. And so, you know what? Maybe I still could make a team down the road in the marathon, but like, it's more important that you are enjoying what you're doing. And I have to tell you, if all you care, there was no way I was going to run 2:32 because the thought of training for it made me want to cry. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So even if I had gone through the motions and met my coaches and met them for workouts and gone to the track, it wasn't going to happen because my gut was like, oh, I don't want to do this. So it wasn't going to happen anyway.
I feel that's literally describing what I mean, I'm pregnant right now, so it's, obviously, but when people ask me, are you going to go back to elite running? That is what I feel like, oh, I don't want to go down that hellhole. Like, no. So yeah, I totally get what you're saying.
There's times in your life where you're motivated and you want to do it, but it's so much dedication and so much time away from other things you care about that if you're not super excited and it's not like revving you up every time you think about it, it's probably not worth it, at least not right now. And there's so many other things to do to stay fit and to enjoy the sport you love. And maybe it'll come back again and maybe it won't, but it actually doesn't define you as a person.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I love that last bit because that's the most important part of all. All right, so let's finish off talking about the big baddie in the arena here. So I would like for you to tell us, just about the if you could just kind of tell people the damage that Nike has done here. Most people, they say, yeah, Nike's done some bad things, but then we see things like CIM, and I don't know if you saw that video, and there's like almost all of the runners are either in Vaporflies or in Next Percents or some version of Nike shoes. So really, what can you say to people to convince them that yes, Nike in many cases may come out with quote unquote the best products, but what does that say about us as runners? The fact that we can say, oh, Nike, shame on you, but then still go out and use and purchase their shoes. And these are people trying to make the Olympic trials. They're not trying to make the Olympic team that's going to change their life forever. So what would you like to remind people of, just what they're doing right now, and by supporting them, by purchasing their products, what we are doing to our sport?
Yeah, I get that people want to run fast and they've worked really hard and they have goals, but I know people are outraged at what has happened to women when they get pregnant, what has happened at the Nike Oregon Project with coaches that are still being defended by Nike. And people are outraged by what happened to Mary Kane. So when you say, I am outraged, shame on them, but you still go and buy a Vaporfly, you are saying you don't really care. You care, but you can't be bothered in any real way because, what does my dollars mean? But if everybody thought, you know what, until you change, which by the way, they have the capability to change. Mm-hmm. Until you change, I'm not going to buy your products. And maybe that means I run a little bit slower because I don't have an assisted propulsion device on my foot, but I'm going to force them to change. And I just want to say, people that are so upset about the Nike stuff, I thank you, because we should be upset. I mean, this is not okay what's going on. But if you go out and say, well, I'm just going to buy a pair of Vaporflies, that's it. You are actively funding Alberto Salazar's appeal. You are paying for it. You are giving dollars to the company who's turning around and fighting for his appeal. And same for Dr. Brown. So if you are disgusted that they're still defending these people, by you purchasing that product, you are actually funding that defense, and you are aiding them and enabling them to continue on. I know that it's super hard. I know that we all want to run the best we can. We all want products we like. But if everybody said, you know what, I love those sports bras, I love their shoes, but I'm not going to buy them until you guys change, they would have to change. But right now, if you look at those videos from CIM, no one is really fighting for us. And I think I don't know, it makes me really sad. And I wish people would say that to Nike, say, we want you to do better. We know you can do better. And until you actually change the Oregon Project, don't just take the name away, but actually dismantle it, until you actually start protecting female athletes, until you actually hold Salazar accountable, until you actually take his name off the building, I'm not going to buy your products. And as soon as you do, I will be back. They would have to. And so I just want to say, like, people go, well, what does my dollars do? Well, one person, nothing, but all of those Vaporflies not being bought, all of those hundreds of people at CIM racing in other branded shoes, that would matter.
Yep.
And that would force them to change. So please, I know you don't want to be inconvenienced, but just think about what they're doing to people and think, do you really want to be supporting that?
Yeah, well, and think about the reason their shoes are the best. Where have they've got your money already to make their products the best, but what is the sacrifice for them being the best? Like, we are, you are, all of us are. So, yeah, thank you for that. That just is, I just wanted to really kind of hammer it home to people, because like you said, it is tempting. And you know, I feel kind of sad too, because, you know, I have all this Great Britain stuff that I worked 14 years to get my hands on, that Great Britain, you know, all the stuff they gave me, but I just can't wear it. I just don't feel good about wearing it. And that's sad to me, that I worked so hard for all those years to get my Great Britain jersey, and I can't wear any of the stuff that goes with it, because it makes me feel a bit sick when I'm wearing it. So, you know, it's not like you were saying they're done forever. Like, you know, I'm taking a stand. I'm never going to wear a Nike product again. But like you said, until they change things, until it gets through to them. Right. And then all those clothes that you've bought over the years, put them away. Maybe you can bring them back out again when they kind of, you know, change their standards. And then you can say, right, Nike, now I support you. I myself, I feel proud to wear you again because you did the right thing. So thank you for that.
Yeah. And you know what? They could change the culture. They are the industry leader. They are the worldwide leader. If they said, okay, this is enough. We're going to clean out our sports marketing department. We're going to bring in a more diverse group of people. We're not going to sign anyone who served doping bans anymore. We're certainly not going to protect athletes and coaches that have been found guilty. You know, like, we are changing, and we are going to, like, set, you know, like, they could do it, and they could do it in such a great, amazing way. And that would become, I mean, I feel like most of the smaller companies are kind of already there, but that would become the new industry standard. And this is the culture of the sport. And I know there are really good people there. And I do want to thank the people who just protested.
Yes.
But again, they were silenced. They were told if they spoke to the media, they would lose their jobs. And so I want those people, they are the people who are going to change, because they are working at the company and they don't like the way it's run. And so to those people, I just want to say thank you and keep fighting, because if you guys could get in charge, you guys could do a lot of amazing things.
So do you think that protest represented anything, the fact that they couldn't speak? Do you feel like that's another kind of maybe check mark for some people of like, all right, that's it. Like, you wouldn't even let your employees say anything? Or do you think we're kind of getting closer to where enough people are going to snap that a decision is made or things have to change? Or do you kind of feel a bit hopeless about the future, that they aren't going to feel that guilt to change?
Somebody texted me that the day that protest happened, the Wall Street Journal printed an article, but then also printed their stocks, and their stocks went up 3% that day. So I just feel like I don't know what needs to happen for people to care. They say they care. And it's like story after story after story of corruption and mistreatment and abuse. And we get angry for a day, and then we see like an inspirational video, or we see like a new product that came out, and we're like, oh, squirrel. And we're just totally, we forget, you know, and it's like, come on, guys, look, we are all smart and intelligent, and we all want better. And let's actually make it happen, because we are the people who can make it happen. Those employees that care, and the people who purchase the products, we can make a change.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. So to wrap up here, tell us about some things you have coming up. You mentioned a high school camp. How could someone get involved in that? Although I think you're sold out already for next year, aren't you?
Yeah, so I actually haven't picked dates yet because I've just been kind of crazy. But yes, I'm having a girls' camp again next year, probably in Denver. And then I'll have my women's retreat again. But basically, I'm just trying to enjoy the holidays this year. Last year, I had a track session on Christmas, and I said, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to I'm going to be present, a more present family member throughout the holidays. So right now, I'm just running for fun and getting through the holidays. And then as next year comes along, I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet. I definitely want to do another 50K or maybe even a 50 miler, but I'm not really allowing myself to look into races yet. I'm trying to just enjoy the time of my life right now.
I think that is so good and so healthy. And anywhere else so people can find you on Instagram, on Twitter. You're one of the co-hosts of the Clean Sport podcast. Anywhere else?
Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. Yeah, I do we have a weekly podcast for the Clean Sport Collective, and I'm on about half of those. But really, we're just telling the stories of people who care about clean sport. And in fact, we'd love to have you on at some point. And then, I'm very active on Twitter and Instagram. And so that's really where you'll find me. Yeah.
Okay. Well, on behalf of everyone listening, on behalf of women, on behalf of just our sport, thank you. Like I cannot think of anyone who, has impacted. I know you obviously jumped to Mary or maybe Lauren or some other people, but to me, you really have kind of spoken out, especially when it's against your nature, and you've said things that so many others have thought. So thank you for your thoughtful responses and for just being who you are. We really appreciate you.
Thanks, Tina. Thank you for having me.
My friends, if you have a minute and you could leave a review on your favorite podcast player, Apple Podcasts, aka iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Spotify, or whatever else podcast player you use to listen to this podcast, or if you would subscribe to this podcast, you will help me get out in front of new runners to make our tribe even bigger and even better. It might not seem like you as one person can make a difference, but really it helps a lot. And it shows me you appreciate the hard work I put in for those. Thank you so much. I just appreciate her honesty so much and her just willingness to stand up for what she believes in. And I hope that was good for you to hear, especially if you are someone who is quiet, who is introverted, that it is okay to kind of speak up and stand up for some things that really matter to you, because we all have those things that really matter to us, and we should be standing up and fighting. And she's really made me think a little more about, for me, the environmental issue of like, we need to change something like now is really something that's in my mind, and I need to take a bigger stand, and I need to do what I can to kind of help people and I don't know, just get the word out a bit more. So I really admired what she said there. And I think this episode just in general would have made us think a lot more. I just want to take a quick moment to thank UCAN, Recoup and Body Health for sponsoring this episode. You can get 25% off at generationucan.com using code TinaMuir25. You can get 15% off at recoupfitness.com using code TinaMuir. That was the recovery products like the ice cup replacements. And you can get 10% off at tinamuir.com/aminos. You can get 10% off your order of Body Health and Perfect Amino tablets are my favorite thing there. All right, so you can find links to those three things in addition to everything else Cara and I talked about, that podcast episode with Sally, and many of the other things I mentioned, the Clean Sport Collective, things like that. All right, so next week, didn't give you the link there. You can find links at tinamuir.com/episode 165. You are truly getting the real Tina today, as you can clearly tell, not maybe prepared as much as I usually do. Next week, we have Michael Capariso, who is the CEO and president of New York Roadrunners, and I'm excited for you to learn from him. They didn't tell me to record this in any way. They didn't pitch him to me. I just had seen him doing things that I just thought was so inspirational, and he just had such a passion when I'd seen him around over the past few months. And I didn't really talk to him too much, but I just really watched from afar and admired him. So I wanted you to get to know him a little bit more. And yes, it does go beyond New York. I promise you, it's not just for New York people. So be sure to tune into that one next week. If this is your first time listening, please go subscribe. Please leave a rating and review. I really appreciate you. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Have a great week.
Thanks for listening to the Running for Real podcast. Be sure to check out tinamuir.com for show notes and even more helpful running information.